You won't make it without him." That's what they whispered when she walked away from the penthouse. But now she's walking through the terminal with twins who look just like him, and the man who once owned everything can't move. Because for the first time, he's seeing what real wealth looks like. Stay with us. What starts as heartbreak often ends in power, because every woman they tried to silence found her voice in the echoes of her pain. Every goodbye became a beginning. Every loss turned into legacy. This isn't just her story. It's every story they thought would end in silence. Where in the world are you watching from tonight? Drop your city in the comments. Have you ever rewritten your own story? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Black Stories Untold with Love, and ring that notification bell for more heartwarming stories that celebrate strength. The private terminal was a blur of polished glass and muted luxury. Clark Anderson moved through it like a man with a flight to catch and a world waiting on his arrival. His coat swung behind him, his phone buzzed in his palm, and his assistant trailed close, rattling off numbers and names he barely heard. He had built an empire on speed and precision. Missed moments were for other men, until the laugh stopped him, soft, bright, familiar. It rippled through the air like a song he hadn't known he remembered. His steps faltered, his gaze followed the sound. And then time split in two. They ran past him in a blur of motion. A boy and a girl. Brown skin glowing under the white light of the terminal. Dark curls bouncing as they weaved between travelers. Matching backpacks, matching shoes, laughter in stereo. And eyes. Hazel-green, golden around the edges. His eyes. Clark stood still. The sound of the terminal faded. The tap of shoes, the murmur of calls, the polite announcements from the speaker overhead, all dissolved beneath the roar in his ears. He turned slowly, the coffee in his hand forgotten, cooling against his skin. Then he saw her, Makenna, sitting near gate 32A, her legs crossed, her back tall, arms outstretched to catch the twins as they tumbled into her lap. She looked different, and exactly the same. Her locks were longer, pulled into a low bun. A soft gray sweater fell off one shoulder, worn but elegant. She laughed again, low and warm, brushing crumbs from the boy's face. Clark's chest tightened. She hadn't seen him yet. She was too focused on zipping coats, passing juice boxes, soothing small tempers. Every move she made was confident. Practiced, alone. 3 years ago, she had stood in their penthouse, one hand on her belly, the other holding her truth. She had wanted more. A family. He had said not now, not ever, not like this. He remembered her eyes then. Not angry, just finished. Now here she was, surrounded by everything he claimed not to want, and it was beautiful. His feet moved without permission, one step, then another, close enough to hear her whisper something to the girl, close enough to see the necklace at her throat, the one he gave her the night she launched her own firm. It still glinted like fire. The boy looked up. Their eyes met. Clark felt it like a blow. Recognition, or maybe just possibility. The child blinked, then turned back to Makenna, tugging at her sleeve. She bent down, listening, nodding, smiling. She was whole, not surviving, thriving. He could see it in the ease of her hands, the softness in her voice. He had chosen absence, and she had filled it. Her boarding group was called. She rose with quiet grace, taking each child by the hand. Still, she hadn't seen him. Or maybe she had. Maybe she had seen him the moment she stepped into this terminal and decided not to see him at all. He stood there, rooted to the polished floor, watching them walk away. A mother, 2 children, and the sound of a laugh he would never carry in his home. The kind of laugh that could have belonged to him. if he had said yes. Instead, all he could do was watch her disappear into the gate, and realize this was not the first time he had let her leave, but it might be the last. The city below them shimmered like a galaxy. From the penthouse window, Manhattan looked endless, 1,000 lives moving beneath the quiet hum of glass and steel. Inside, everything was still. The scent of her jasmine candle drifted through the air, soft and lingering, the only warmth in a space built for control. Makenna stood by the window, barefoot, her reflection caught between the city lights and her own quiet defiance. She had once loved this view. It made her feel close to him, like they were both standing above the noise of the world they were trying to conquer. But lately, the silence between them had grown too wide to bridge. Even the city could not fill it. Clark sat on the edge of the couch, sleeves rolled up, the glow from his laptop washing his face in blue. He looked powerful, composed, the kind of man who built empires while others dreamed. Yet beneath that precision lived a restlessness she could no longer ignore. He spoke in numbers, in forecasts and growth charts, always reaching for what came next. She had tried to meet him there, but she was made of rhythm, not deadlines. She wanted mornings with messy pancakes and laughter echoing through the marble hallways. She wanted something real enough to hold. He had told her not yet, then not now, and eventually, never. The word had settled between them like frost on glass. She turned from the window and looked at him. Her voice was soft, but it carried truth in every syllable. There was no argument left, no plea for him to change. Just the quiet recognition that love cannot live where there is no room for it to grow. He glanced up, and for the first time, he saw what leaving looked like before it happened. The way her eyes had stopped reaching for him, the way her hands no longer sought his when the silence stretched. She wasn't angry. She was done. Her suitcase was already by the door. Not a threat, a decision. He wanted to say something that would make her stay, but the words never came. Pride held his tongue, and fear built the wall between them higher. She gave him one last look, a kind of goodbye that didn't need sound to be heard. Then she walked toward the elevator, her heels clicking softly on the marble floor. He listened to the sound fade until it was gone. Later, when the door closed behind her, the penthouse felt colder. The city lights still glittered below, but they no longer looked like stars. They looked like reminders. He told himself she would come back, that she always did. But this time, she didn't. And somewhere in the spaces between their two lives, the future she had dreamed of began without him. Years would pass before he realized that what she left behind wasn't just absence. It was the life he had been too afraid to claim. The glass between them was thin, but it might as well have been an ocean. Clark stood still, his reflection hovering over the scene like a ghost. On the other side, Makenna crouched beside the twins, her coat brushing the floor, her fingers gently zipping jackets and adjusting backpacks shaped like bears. Her lips moved with the rhythm of a lullaby only they could hear. Her eyes were focused, soft but alert, like a woman who had long stopped waiting for someone to catch her and had learned instead to build wings from the ground up. She looked beautiful, not in the way she had at galas or on red carpets at his side, but in the quiet, unshakable way of someone who had earned her joy through fire. Clark had known power. He had spoken in rooms that cost more per hour than most people made in a year. He had written checks that shifted markets. He had owned silence like a weapon, but none of it prepared him for this stillness. Because here, now, he could not enter. He could only witness. The girl tugged at Makenna's scarf. The boy pointed at something outside the window, face lit with wonder. Clark saw his own expression there, the tilt of the brow, the shape of the jaw, the wild joy in discovery, a mirror he never expected to meet. He swallowed, the motion tight in his throat. Behind him, his assistant murmured something. Gate. Time. Urgency. He didn't answer. Couldn't. His world had narrowed to 3 figures framed in a terminal he once believed he would never set foot in. Makenna rose slowly, her fingers interlacing with the children's. The movement was small, but it carried weight. Years of repetition, bedtimes, tantrums, first steps, all without him. She didn't glance back. She didn't need to. The boy turned again, eyes wide, searching, finding Clark, holding his stare. There was no fear in the boy's gaze, no judgment, just stillness, the kind that strips a man bare. Clark inhaled. The air tasted of cold metal and old choices. He had once believed that presence was something you bought, that love could wait while you built your empire, that timing was negotiable. But the distance between them now could not be closed with apologies or promises. It was measured in birthday candles not blown out, first words not heard, scraped knees not kissed. And yet, she had done it, all of it, alone. Makenna bent to lift a toy that had fallen. The scarf shifted, revealing the curve of her neck, the memory of how he used to kiss it when mornings were slow and love was simple. She stood again, taller somehow. The bench was cold beneath her, but her children were warm. One leaned into her side, head nestled beneath her collarbone. The other kicked gently at the edge of her duffel bag, humming a made-up song through a mouthful of goldfish crackers. Makenna sat between them, her coat open, scarf loose, shoes scuffed from too many rushed mornings. Her eyes moved with quiet calculation across the terminal, scanning for delays, dangers, and distractions in the practiced way of a woman who no longer had the luxury of letting her guard down. There was no stroller, no help, no hands, but her own. She shifted slightly, pulling her son's hood over his head. The movement was small, instinctive, but full of memory. She had taught herself this rhythm, how to be everywhere at once, how to listen with her whole body, how to carry groceries, heartbreak, and twins, sometimes all at the same time. The woman she had been 4 years ago would not recognize this version of herself. That woman had learned to blend in beside wealth. She had learned to smile through questions meant to belittle and quiet herself in rooms where being heard was too expensive. She wore silk like armor. She loved Clark the way a flame loves oxygen, fully, without hesitation, until there was nothing left. But this woman was stillness after the burn. She worked from a corner desk between naps and mealtimes, designing systems for clients who never saw the crayon marks on her keyboard. She paid rent on time, cooked with care, and taught her children to say thank you with both hands. There were no matching pajamas, no curated Christmas cards. But there was peace, not the kind you buy, the kind you fight for. Makenna glanced down at her daughter, who had begun to draw invisible lines on the floor with her finger. She smiled. Then, briefly, her gaze drifted past the crowds, past the gate signs, past the gloss of the morning light on polished tiles, and stopped. He was there. Clark, still sharp in a tailored coat, still polished like old money, but standing alone now, as if the ground beneath him had tilted. She looked away. Her heart did not race, not the way it once had. But it did tighten, not from longing, from memory. The man who had watched her pack her bags with silence now stood frozen, watching her carry the life he said he wasn't ready for. She turned her attention back to her children, unbothered, unshaken, but not untouched, because seeing him did not break her. It reminded her of who she had become, of what she had survived, and of the beautiful, necessary truth that she had rebuilt her life from the ground up, without him, and never less, only more. The screen blinked red, delayed. Weather over the Atlantic, unpredictable winds, a luxury jet with nowhere to go. Clark Anderson stared at the update without blinking, as if his gaze alone could will time back into obedience. His assistant offered solutions, alternate routes, another jet in 3 hours. He waved her off. For once, he had nowhere more urgent to be than right here. He wandered, out of the private terminal, past the glass lounges and leather seats and curated silence, into the public concourse, where everything was louder, messier, real. The air smelled like fast food and exhaustion. Families sprawled on the floor, suitcases rolled over tired feet. A child screamed in the distance. Clark moved through it like a man out of place, but not immune. And then he saw her again. She was seated on the floor near a charging station. No designer lounge, no velvet rope. Her knees drawn up, her arms stretched across 2 small bodies curled into her sides. One twin slept with a cracker still in hand. The other played with her curls, twisting them absent-mindedly as he hummed to himself. She looked tired, but not broken. Her face held the softness of someone who had made peace with hard things, the kind of woman who knew the price of silence and still chose grace. She unwrapped a snack bar, broke it in 2, and handed it to the boy without a word. He smiled up at her like she was the sun. She smiled back, slow and deep, like it was the best job she'd ever been given. Clark sat, a few rows away, close enough to watch, far enough to stay invisible. He told himself he was gathering courage, but really he was hiding, behind the privilege of distance, behind the illusion that time might grant him the words. What would he even say? I was afraid. I chose the world and left you to carry it. I wanted the shape of you without the sound of your future. He had rehearsed apologies before, once, in the months after she left. Words like maybe, and if I had only, and I should have. But they felt small now, ill-fitted against the sight of her here feeding their children, tying tiny shoelaces with fingers that had once smoothed the collar of his suits. The boy looked up. Eyes swept the room. For a moment, Clark thought he saw him again. That same still gaze. Not accusing, not forgiving, just knowing. Makenna never looked his way. She rested her head against the wall, closed her eyes. For a second, she looked like she might drift off. But mothers like her didn't sleep. They floated in and out of alertness, always listening, always halfway between rest and readiness. Clark leaned forward. He thought about standing, about walking to her, about kneeling down and saying something, anything. But the words stuck like stone in his chest, because this woman did not need saving. She never had. And now she had given her heart to 2 people who returned it without conditions. He stayed seated. His flight was still grounded, but the moment had already taken off. The world did not pause. The announcements kept calling flights that weren't hers. The wheels of suitcases still scraped across the floor. The hum of morning travel never dimmed. But for one breathless moment, everything inside Clark Anderson came to a halt. Their eyes met. It was not dramatic. No gasp, no trembling. Just the heavy clarity of being seen by someone who knew you at your core and no longer trembled at the sight of you. She stood 10 steps away. No barrier between them now. No glass, no city, no years. Just her and the 2 small children tangled around her legs like vines around a tree that would never fall. She didn't smile, didn't blink. She simply nodded, barely. A gesture so small it could be missed. But it wasn't. He felt it in his chest. Makenna turned her attention downward. The girl had lost a mitten. The boy's snack had spilled. She moved with ease, one hand wiping crumbs, the other reaching for a tissue. Then she slung the backpack over her shoulder with one swift motion, caught the dangling scarf before it slipped, and gathered both children in close. It was not perfection. It was power. She moved like a woman who had collapsed once and built herself back up out of whatever she could carry. Grace did not drip from her like polish. It pulsed from her like blood. Honest. undeniable. Clark watched her zip the bag while her daughter clung to her wrist, watched her crouch to tie a shoelace while her son leaned into her back. He remembered telling her that children would complicate everything, that they would slow them down, trap them, turn her brilliance into burden. But what he saw now was freedom, the kind no amount of wealth could buy. Her freedom was not quiet. It sang, in the way her daughter whispered stories while brushing the edge of her coat, in the way her son slid his tiny hand into hers without needing to be asked, in the way she carried the noise, the mess, the magic of motherhood without apology. Clark stood frozen, hands in pockets, watching the life he once feared unfolding in front of him like scripture he had never bothered to read. He wanted to step forward, to speak, to say anything that might reach her, but there was nothing in his throat that would not betray him, because this silence said more than anything ever could. It said she had become what he said she could not. It said she had raised joy from the ruins of their goodbye. It said she was no longer his consequence. She was her own redemption. She glanced up once more, not to invite, not to wound, just to witness him standing there, a man with nothing in his hands, a man watching a woman carry everything he left behind and turn it into gold. And then she turned away, not with bitterness, but with purpose. And he watched the future walk away in sneakers and curls, and he knew she had made a home where he once left an echo. He stepped forward, not fast, not bold, just enough to be seen. The space between them was small now, but the distance was not. It stretched with the weight of what had been unspoken for too long. The children clung to her sides, fingers curled in fabric, attention drifting toward candy wrappers and bright colors beyond them. They had no idea what this moment was. But she did, and so did he. She straightened without effort. Her back did not stiffen. It had been straight long before he arrived. She did not reach for her children. They were already hers, held not by fear, but by trust. Clark's breath caught in his throat, dragged down by the question he never thought he'd ask, the one that had haunted him since that flash of green-flecked eyes and a tilt of the chin that mirrored his childhood photos. Are they mine? The words came out low, not soft, just careful, like even he wasn't sure he deserved to hear the answer. The silence between them thickened. Makenna's eyes did not narrow. They did not soften. They held. They measured, they remembered. She let the question hang, and that silence said yes, but also no. It said they were hers, wholly without apology, without the need for permission or validation. You didn't want them. Her voice was steady, not bitter, not sharp, just true. The kind of truth that had learned to survive without applause. Why ask now? He had no answer, only shame. It rose like heat across the back of his neck, settled into the pit of his stomach, not because she accused him, but because she didn't have to. He looked at the children, their eyes flicked toward him, curious, polite, unmoved. He smiled, a small thing. The boy blinked and turned away. The girl leaned into her mother's leg. Stranger, that was who he was now. A man with familiar features and no meaning. A face that once lived in dreams, but never in memory. Makenna bent to pick up a fallen glove. Her movements were fluid, unbothered. She had done this dance too many times to let it shake her now. Clark took a step back, not because she asked him to, but because he no longer knew how to stand in front of her without unraveling. He had once believed his absence would be forgotten, that time and money could make peace with what he abandoned, but peace was not his to claim. It belonged to her now. It wore the shape of small hands and soft giggles, of bedtime songs and early morning cereal spills, of everything he had missed. He stood in front of the life he once denied and watched it move without him, complete, unshaken, unclaimed. And as he turned away, her voice followed him. Not loud, not cruel, just final, you're late, and he knew he always had been. The coffee was cold. He had not touched it since it arrived. It sat in front of him like a prop, a distraction, something to hold while the rest of his world unraveled one quiet truth at a time. Clark sat in the corner of the airport cafe. The hum of travelers moved around him, but he heard none of it. His eyes stayed fixed on the woman at the far table, Makenna, the twins, and the phone in her hand. It was angled upward, the way you hold a screen when you want someone to see your whole world. The man on the other end smiled wide. Brown skin, dimples, voice full of love. He called them his babies. Clark's jaw tightened. He could not hear every word, but he did not need to. The laughter told the story. The way the twins lit up, the way Makenna's posture softened, her smile slipping into something unguarded, something safe. He looked away. His reflection stared back from the window beside him, sharpened cheekbones, tired eyes, a suit that no longer made him feel powerful. He remembered the night she left, the way she stood by the door, one hand on the handle, the other on her belly. She had waited for him to speak, and he had chosen silence. He told himself it was noble, that she deserved someone who wanted the same things, that letting her go was better than pretending to be someone he was not. But now he saw it clearly. He had not chosen nobility. He had chosen fear. He had chosen himself. Clark watched the screen again. The man on the video was making faces now, silly ones. The twins shrieked with delight. The little boy called him something soft, a name Clark could not make out, but it was enough to make his chest ache. Was it her partner, a friend, a brother he did not know? But someone had shown up. Someone had stepped into the space he left behind and filled it with laughter and light and presence. Someone had seen what Clark had been too blind to honor, too arrogant to hold. He pressed his fingers against his temple. This was the life he once imagined would slow him down. This was the love he believed he could postpone, compartmentalize, delay until it was convenient. And now it moved without him. He closed his eyes. For a moment he could almost hear her voice. The way she used to say his name when the city went quiet. The way she once believed he would choose her. Choose them. Choose something deeper than legacy. But legacy means nothing if no one carries it with you. He opened his eyes. The screen had gone dark. Makenna was packing up now, wrapping snacks, buckling bags, kissing foreheads. She did not look over. She did not scan the room for him. Her world was full. She did not need him to be near. And still, he stayed seated, staring into a life he had once been invited to lead and now could only witness from the other side of the glass. Gate 32. A flickered overhead in soft yellow light. Final boarding. The line shuffled forward. Mothers bounced babies on hips. Teenagers clutched neck pillows. The hum of announcements pressed into the air like static. It was almost time. Makenna adjusted the strap of her carry-on and reached for their hands, one child on each side. Their small fingers wrapped around hers like instinct. No rush in her step, no fear in their eyes. Just the rhythm of a life lived on her terms. Clark stood near the wall, motionless, rooted by regret. He had not planned to wait this long, but something in him could not leave. Not yet. Not when she was still within reach. He watched as she moved toward the gate. Her coat trailed slightly behind her, her shoulders steady, her eyes forward. But just as she passed him, she paused. The children slowed beside her, sensing the shift in air. Makenna turned. No theatrics, no tears, just that gaze again. The one that held oceans. The one that had once looked at him like he was home. They're happy. Her voice was quiet, but it landed with weight, and I'm whole. There it was, the sentence that split the past from the present. He opened his mouth. A word tried to rise. Maybe sorry. Maybe stay. But it caught in his throat, hollow and too late. She didn't wait. She turned again and walked forward. The twins skipped beside her, their voices rising like music. Laughter spilled from their mouths as they pointed at the jet bridge. They did not look back. He did not follow, because there was nothing to chase, no invitation, no window to climb through, only a door that had once been open and was now gently, completely closed. She had given him more than grace. She had given him truth, not to hurt him, but to free herself. The hum of the terminal rose again. Another gate, another flight, another life moving forward. He blinked and realized she was gone. Just the echo of giggles remained, fading down a corridor he could not walk. And somewhere deep inside, Clark Anderson finally understood. This was not the end of something he could fix. This was the beginning of a life he would never again be part of. The glass was warm beneath his palm. He stood at the window, unmoving, while the plane rolled down the runway. Its nose tilted. Its engines roared. Then it rose, slowly at first, like it was unsure. Then, all at once, like it had never known how to stay. Clark followed it with his eyes until it became a silver glint swallowed by clouds. Gone. The terminal buzzed behind him with the rhythm of other people's lives. Departures announced in cheerful tones. Luggage wheels clicking against tile. A baby cried. A man laughed into a phone. The world did not pause for his heartbreak. He had stood there too long. His coffee had grown cold. His coat still draped over the chair. But he couldn't leave. Not yet. Not while the sky still held the shape of what he had lost. She had not left with anger. She had left with certainty. There had been no final speech, no demand to be remembered. Just that one look. That single truth handed to him like a stone he would carry for the rest of his life. "They are happy I am whole," the words echoed, not as accusation, but as fact. And somehow, that was harder to bear. Clark had never been short on power. He knew how to bend time, how to buy silence, how to shape rooms with nothing but a glance. He could launch companies before breakfast, build networks with a handshake, but he could not rewind a single morning with her. He could not hold the weight of two small bodies asleep in his arms. He could not call her name now and expect it to mean what it once did. He had missed it. The moment that mattered. The decision not to show up. The silence in the face of her need. The lie he told himself that he had more time. And now all he had was the memory of a girl in pink shoes pointing toward the sky, and a boy with his eyes laughing at a joke Clark had never earned. He would leave this airport. He would board another plane. He would sit in another private cabin where the champagne sparkled and the sky bent to his convenience. But the window would follow him. Every takeoff would carry their names. Every landing would ask the same question. What if he pressed his hand against the glass once more? Felt the warmth fade, and then finally, he turned. Not because he was ready, but because the gate was empty now and the sky had already let them go. Before you go, take a moment to carry her story forward. Somewhere, a woman is choosing peace over perfection, strength over status, and needs to know she's not alone. Share this video and remind her that walking away doesn't mean losing. Sometimes, it's how you finally win. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, drop a comment, and share it with a friend. And don't forget to subscribe to Black Stories Untold for more stories that uncover hidden struggles, celebrate strength, and remind us that every voice matters.